A physician who has spent 23 years in geriatric medicine and treated over 18,000 seniors reveals something that contradicts everything conventional wisdom teaches about aging. The morning routines promoted by wellness influencers and billion-dollar supplement companies are missing the single most critical element that determines whether someone lives independently to 95 or spends their final decade in assisted care. Seniors who follow mainstream morning advice are showing up in emergency rooms with muscle wasting so severe their bones are literally visible through skin, balance so compromised they cannot stand from a toilet without assistance, and cognitive decline that robs them of the ability to recognize their own grandchildren. The global wellness industry generates $4.5 trillion annually by selling supplements, smoothies, and morning rituals that address symptoms while ignoring the root cause of accelerated aging after 65. Research teams at Harvard Medical School conducted an 8-year longitudinal study tracking 2,300 adults over 65 and discovered findings so profound they challenged fundamental assumptions about aging. Adults who incorporated one specific morning practice showed cellular aging markers equivalent to people 12 to 15 years younger, experienced 47% reduction in all-cause mortality over the following decade, and maintained cognitive function scores 92% higher than peers who skipped this practice. Clinical observations across thousands of patients reveal identical patterns. Those who perform this morning habit demonstrate bone density measurements comparable to adults 20 years younger, balance stability scores that predict fall risk reduction of 63%, and muscle preservation that maintains independence decades longer than national averages suggest possible. The biological mechanism centers on a cascade effect that begins within minutes of waking. When the body receives a specific stimulus first thing in morning hours, it triggers protein synthesis pathways, activates mitochondrial biogenesis, stimulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor production, and initiates hormonal responses that essentially reverse multiple aging processes simultaneously. This video counts down the 5 most powerful morning habits ranked from helpful to absolutely life-changing, and the #1 practice activates biological responses that pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying to synthesize into patented drugs. Before diving deeper, a question for viewers watching right now. How old are you currently, and where in the world are you watching from? Every comment gets read and personally replied to because shared experiences help other seniors realize they face these challenges together rather than in isolation. The changes probably started so gradually that they seem normal at first. Getting out of bed requires an extra moment to steady balance. Morning stiffness lasts longer than it used to. That fog in the mind takes until mid-morning to fully clear. These symptoms feel like inevitable parts of aging that everyone simply accepts and endures. What most people do not realize is how catastrophically this accelerates without intervention. After age 65, adults lose approximately 8% of muscle mass per decade without resistant stimulus, and that rate doubles to 15% per decade after age 75. The mathematics become devastating. A 70-year-old who does nothing will lose nearly half their muscle mass by age 85. Brain volume shrinks by 0.5% annually after 60, meaning a decade represents 5% total brain tissue loss. Bone density decreases 1 to 2% yearly in the absence of proper loading stimulus. These are not abstract statistics. They translate into concrete loss of capability and independence that transforms daily life into struggle. When muscle mass drops below critical thresholds, the simple act of standing from a chair becomes impossible without using arms for assistance. Once that capability disappears, independence essentially ends. Bathing requires help. Toileting requires assistance. The dignity and autonomy that define adult life evaporate. Research published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society tracked outcomes for adults who lost independent standing capability and found that 83% required nursing home placement within 18 months. The trajectory accelerates once it begins. Seniors who enter assisted living facilities experience 40% faster cognitive decline than those who remain independent, creating a devastating feedback loop where loss of physical independence accelerates mental decline, which further compromises physical capability. The mortality statistics prove even more sobering. Adults over 70 who cannot stand from a seated position without hand assistance face all-cause mortality rates 2.4 times higher than peers who maintain this capability. The ability to rise from a chair without hands predicts lifespan more accurately than blood pressure, cholesterol, or blood sugar levels. Every single morning that passes without addressing this represents another day of irreversible decline, another percentage point of muscle lost, another increment of independence sacrificed. Number 5 might sound almost too simple when first hearing it, but what it does inside the body at the cellular level represents one of the most powerful anti-aging interventions available to any senior. This practice involves drinking 16 to 20 ounces of room temperature water within 15 minutes of waking, and researchers at Loma Linda University discovered effects that extend far beyond simple hydration. When the body receives this water bolus first thing in the morning, it triggers a cascade of beneficial responses throughout multiple organ systems. The digestive tract responds by initiating peristaltic waves that improve bowel regularity, addressing the chronic constipation that affects over 40% of seniors. The cardiovascular system experiences improved blood viscosity, reducing the morning spike in heart attack and stroke risk that peaks in the first 3 hours after waking. The renal system begins flushing metabolic waste products that accumulated overnight, improving kidney function markers by measurable amounts. Most remarkably, brain imaging studies show that morning hydration improves cognitive function scores by 18 to 23% within just 30 minutes of consumption. A patient named Dorothy, 72 years old and retired from teaching elementary school, used to struggle with afternoon brain fog so severe she could not follow conversations with her daughter. She started every morning with coffee but rarely drank plain water before lunch. Her physician suggested adding 2 glasses of room temperature water immediately upon waking before the coffee routine. Within 3 weeks, Dorothy noticed dramatic differences. Her thinking stayed clear throughout entire days. She remembered names and details that previously slipped away. Her energy levels remained stable instead of crashing mid-afternoon. The constipation that had plagued her for years resolved completely without laxatives or fiber supplements. To implement this practice correctly, place a large glass or bottle containing 16 to 20 ounces of water on the nightstand every evening before bed. The water should be room temperature rather than cold because cold water can shock the system and actually delay absorption. Immediately upon waking, before checking phones or getting out of bed, drink the entire amount steadily over 5 to 10 minutes. Avoid chugging it quickly as this can cause nausea. Room temperature water absorbs into the bloodstream within 20 to 30 minutes, while cold water takes nearly an hour. After finishing the water, wait at least 30 minutes before consuming coffee or tea, as caffeine has diuretic effects that partially counteract the hydration benefits. Track this habit daily for 3 weeks to allow the body time to adapt and for benefits to become noticeable. While morning hydration builds the foundation, the practice at number 4 targets a biological system that determines whether seniors maintain independence or require assistance with basic activities of daily living. This exercise addresses the quadriceps muscles, which research from the American College of Sports Medicine identifies as the single most critical muscle group for maintaining mobility after age 70. The quadriceps control the ability to stand from seated positions, climb stairs, and recover balance when stumbling. These muscles atrophy faster than any other muscle group after 65, losing up to 12% of mass per decade without intervention. The exercise is called the static wall sit, and while it appears deceptively simple, biomechanical analysis reveals it creates unique training stimulus that conventional exercises cannot replicate. When someone performs a wall sit, they create isometric contraction that generates sustained tension without joint movement. This constant tension triggers muscle protein synthesis pathways while simultaneously improving tendon strength and bone density at attachment points. Research published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research measured wall side effects in adults aged 68 to 82 over 12 weeks. Participants showed quadriceps strength increases of 31%, stair climbing speed improvements of 27%, and self-reported ease of standing from chairs improved by 43%. The exercise also produces unexpected cardiovascular benefits. The sustained isometric contraction creates blood pressure changes that stimulate arterial wall adaptation, improving vascular flexibility by amounts comparable to blood pressure medications. A patient named Robert, 76 years old and a retired postal worker, experienced progressively worsening difficulties standing from his recliner without pushing up with his arms. His legs felt weak and unstable. His doctor suggested adding wall sits to his daily routine. Robert started with just 15 seconds, and initially his legs shook so badly he could barely maintain position. Within 2 weeks, he reached 30 seconds. By week 6, he held the position for a full minute without shaking. The transformation in his daily life proved dramatic. He stood from his recliner smoothly without arm assistance. Climbing the stairs to his bedroom no longer left him breathless and shaky. He felt steady and confident on his feet for the first time in years. To perform wall sits correctly, find a clear wall space and stand with back against the wall. Walk feet forward 12 to 18 inches while sliding back down the wall until thighs become parallel to the floor, as though sitting in an invisible chair. Feet should be hip-width apart with knees aligned directly over ankles, not extending past toes. Press entire back firmly against the wall, maintaining neutral spine without arching lower back. Arms can hang at sides or cross over chest. Hold this position while breathing normally, never holding breath. Beginners start with 15 to 20 seconds, which may seem short but creates significant stimulus. Rest for 1 minute, then repeat for 3 total sets. Progress by adding 5 seconds weekly until reaching 1 minute holds. Perform this exercise every other day to allow muscle recovery between sessions. The position should create burning sensation in thighs, which indicates muscle fibers are being properly challenged. Get ready for number 3, because this simple practice addresses a decline that most seniors do not even realize is happening until sudden catastrophic injury forces awareness. This exercise targets the proprioceptive system, which governs balance and spatial awareness. After age 65, the tiny sensory receptors in ankles and feet that communicate position information to the brain begin degenerating. This degradation happens silently without obvious symptoms until the moment when a person steps onto uneven ground and cannot react quickly enough to prevent a fall. Research from the National Institute on Aging reveals that 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls each year, and falls represent the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries in this age group. Over 800,000 seniors are hospitalized annually for fall-related injuries, and 20 to 30% of fallers experience moderate to severe injuries, including hip fractures and traumatic brain injuries that permanently reduce mobility and independence. The exercise is called single-leg standing balance, and neuroscience research proves it creates measurable improvements in brain regions responsible for balance control. When someone stands on one leg, the brain receives intense proprioceptive input from ankle, knee, and hip stabilizer muscles working to maintain equilibrium. This input stimulates neuroplasticity, meaning the brain actually grows new neural connections in balance-controlling regions. A study from the University of North Carolina measured brain changes in seniors who practiced single-leg balance for just 3 minutes daily. After 8 weeks, MRI imaging showed increased gray matter volume in the cerebellum and vestibular cortex, regions directly responsible for balance and fall prevention. Participants demonstrated 46% improvement in standardized balance tests and reported 63% reduction in near-fall episodes during normal daily activities. A patient named Helen, 80 years old and a retired librarian, experienced a terrifying near fall when stepping off a curb. Her ankle wobbled and she barely caught herself from falling into the street. The incident left her afraid to walk outside alone. Her physical therapist suggested daily single-leg balance practice. Helen started by standing next to her kitchen counter, barely able to lift one foot for 5 seconds before needing to grab the counter for stability. She practiced twice daily for 2 minutes. Within 3 weeks, she balanced for 20 seconds without support. By week 8, she stood on one leg for 45 seconds while brushing her teeth each morning. Her confidence walking outside returned completely. The fear that had kept her isolated in her home disappeared. To practice single-leg balance safely, stand next to a sturdy counter or chair that can provide support if needed. Begin with feet hip-width apart. Shift weight onto the right leg and slowly lift the left foot just 2 to 3 inches off the floor. Focus eyes on a fixed point straight ahead to help maintain stability. Keep standing legs slightly bent rather than locked, which engages stabilizer muscles more effectively. Hold this position for as long as possible while maintaining good posture, not leaning to either side. When balance starts to fail, gently place the lifted foot down rather than grabbing support suddenly. Rest for 30 seconds, then repeat on the opposite leg. Perform 3 repetitions on each leg. Beginners may only manage 5 to 10 seconds, which is completely normal and expected. Progress comes quickly with daily practice. Add 5 seconds weekly until reaching 30 seconds on each leg, then progress to 45 and eventually 60 seconds. Advanced practitioners can make the exercise harder by closing eyes, which removes visual input and forces the proprioceptive system to work harder. If single-leg balance seems powerful, wait until discovering what number 2 does for a biological age marker that predicts lifespan with startling accuracy. This practice addresses telomere length, which scientists consider the most reliable indicator of cellular aging. Telomeres are protective caps on the ends of chromosomes that shorten each time cells divide. When telomeres become critically short, cells can no longer divide and either die or enter a senescent state where they release inflammatory compounds that accelerate aging throughout the entire body. Research published in the journal Circulation measured telomere length in over 5,000 adults and found that telomere length predicts cardiovascular mortality and all-cause mortality more accurately than chronological age. Subjects with the shortest telomeres faced mortality risk 3 times higher than subjects with the longest telomeres, regardless of actual age. The practice that influences telomere length is morning resistance exercise performed within 2 hours of waking. Exercise scientists at the University of California, San Francisco conducted a landmark study measuring exercise timing effects on telomere maintenance. They compared adults who performed resistance exercise in morning hours versus afternoon or evening and discovered remarkable differences. Morning exercisers showed telomere lengthening over the 12-month study period, while afternoon and evening exercisers showed normal age-related telomere shortening. The morning group essentially reversed cellular aging, while the other groups aged normally. The biological mechanism relates to circadian rhythm interactions with exercise-induced growth hormone release. Resistance exercise triggers growth hormone secretion, and when this occurs during morning hours when cortisol is naturally elevated, the combination activates telomerase, the enzyme that rebuilds and lengthens telomeres. A patient named Frank, 74 years old and a retired electrician, felt exhausted all day despite sleeping 8 hours nightly. He looked older than his years and experienced the aches and fatigue that had convinced him his active years were finished. His daughter convinced him to try 5 minutes of resistance exercise each morning using resistance bands. Frank was skeptical that 5 minutes could matter, but he committed to 30 days. By week 2, he noticed more energy lasting throughout the day. By week 4, his chronic joint pain diminished noticeably. At 8 weeks, his daughter commented that he looked younger, and Frank agreed. The deep fatigue that had defined his days lifted. He felt motivated to stay active and engaged rather than sitting in his recliner watching television. To implement morning resistance exercise effectively, keep a set of resistance bands next to the bed and perform 5 to 10 minutes of basic exercises within 30 minutes of waking. The specific exercises matter less than the timing and consistency. Simple options include resistance band chest presses, rows, shoulder presses, bicep curls, and leg extensions. Perform each exercise for 30 to 45 seconds, focusing on controlled movements rather than speed or repetition counts. The resistance should feel moderate, challenging, but not exhausting. Complete one circuit of 5 exercises, which takes approximately 5 minutes total. This minimal time investment triggers the hormonal cascade that activates telomerase and promotes cellular age reversal. Perform this routine every single morning without exception. Consistency matters more than intensity for telomere maintenance effects. Before revealing the number one practice, if this information has opened eyes to possibilities for extending healthy lifespan, show support by hitting the like button and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so future science-backed longevity strategies never get missed. Now the moment arrives to reveal the single most powerful morning habit for extending lifespan and maintaining independence past 90 years of age. This practice combines multiple biological mechanisms into one simple routine that addresses muscle preservation, bone density, mitochondrial function, insulin sensitivity, and neuroplasticity simultaneously. The practice is eating 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking. Protein timing represents one of the most overlooked variables in senior health, and emerging research proves that when protein is consumed matters almost as much as how much is consumed. Research teams at the University of Texas Medical Branch studied muscle protein synthesis rates in seniors who consumed protein at different times throughout the day. They measured muscle-building responses using radioactive tracer amino acids and discovered that seniors who consumed 30 grams or more of protein at breakfast built 43% more muscle over 12 weeks compared to seniors who consumed the same total daily protein but spread it evenly or weighted it toward dinner. The explanation relates to circadian regulation of muscle protein synthesis machinery. The molecular switches that activate muscle building operate most efficiently during morning hours when cortisol is elevated and growth hormone is still present from overnight secretion. Consuming adequate protein during this window provides the amino acid building blocks exactly when the cellular machinery is primed to use them most effectively. The benefits extend beyond muscle building. High-protein breakfast consumption improves insulin sensitivity throughout the entire day, reducing blood sugar spikes after lunch and dinner by up to 32%. Brain imaging studies show that morning protein consumption increases dopamine production in reward centers, improving mood and motivation scores while reducing afternoon energy crashes. Bone density measurements reveal that seniors consuming 30 grams of protein at breakfast show significantly slower age-related bone loss than those consuming protein primarily at dinner. The combination of effects creates a comprehensive anti-aging intervention that addresses multiple decline pathways through one simple habit. A patient named Barbara, 69 years old and retired from nursing, experienced progressive muscle loss and weakness despite eating what she considered a healthy diet. She ate oatmeal for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, and a proper dinner with meat or fish. Her total protein intake was adequate, but most of it came at dinner. Her physician suggested shifting to a high-protein breakfast with at least 30 grams of protein. Barbara started eating Greek yogurt with nuts, or eggs with turkey sausage, or a protein smoothie made with protein powder and berries. Within 6 weeks, she noticed her arms and legs looked more defined and felt stronger. Climbing stairs became easier. Her afternoon energy crashes disappeared. At 3 months, grip strength testing showed improvements of 23%, and she reported feeling more capable and confident than she had in over a decade. To implement this practice, aim for exactly 30 grams of protein consumed within 30 minutes of waking. This amount is more than most seniors consume at breakfast, so it requires intentional planning. 30 grams of protein equals approximately 4 eggs, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 1 cup of Greek yogurt, plus 2 tablespoons of nuts, a 6-ounce portion of salmon or chicken, or 1.5 scoops of quality protein powder blended into a smoothie. The protein source matters less than the total amount and the timing. Prepare breakfast components the night before if mornings feel rushed. Hard-boil eggs in advance. Pre-portion cottage cheese or Greek yogurt. Blend smoothie ingredients and store them in the freezer so they just need liquid added in the morning. Track protein intake for the first week to ensure the 30-gram target is being consistently hit. Many seniors discover they were consuming only 10 to 15 grams at breakfast, which explains why they were not experiencing muscle-building benefits despite adequate total daily protein. The 5 morning habits just revealed represent a comprehensive longevity system backed by thousands of research studies and proven in clinical practice across thousands of patients. These practices are not theoretical possibilities, but concrete interventions with measured, documented effects on lifespan and health span. The morning hydration bolus, the wall set exercise, the single leg balance practice, the morning resistance routine, and the high-protein breakfast each address distinct aging mechanisms, and when combined, they create synergistic effects that exceed the sum of individual benefits. The choice made today determines the trajectory of the next 30 years. Adults who implement these 5 practices demonstrate functional capabilities and independence at 85 that match the average 70-year-old. They hike with grandchildren, travel independently, live in their own homes, drive their own cars, and maintain the dignity and autonomy that define quality of life. Adults who ignore these practices follow the standard American aging trajectory of progressive decline, loss of independence, nursing home placement, and premature death. The gap between these two outcomes is not genetics or luck. It is daily choices made every single morning. Start with just one practice today. Master it over the next 2 weeks until it becomes automatic habit. Then add a second practice. Within 3 months, all 5 habits can be firmly established as part of a morning routine that takes less than 20 minutes but literally adds decades to active, independent lifespan. Which of these 5 morning habits will be tried first? Share in the comments below so others can see what resonates most with fellow viewers. If this video provided hope that decline is not inevitable and that simple morning habits can extend healthy life by decades, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs this message. Subscribe to this channel for more evidence-based longevity strategies that help maintain strength, independence, and vitality at any age. The future self 30 years from now will be grateful for the decision made today.